Shalom, and welcome to Psychology of the Parsha for Parshat Shemini. In this week's Parsha, we learn about the 8th day. The 8th day being actually the first day of Nisan, the day that they inaugurated the tabernacle, the very first temple, and the day that the Shekhinah, God's presence, actually came down in a visible, intangible manner, that they actually felt God's presence. And it describes the inaugural service and the inaugural offerings, the blessings that took place. Of course, all of this adds up to joy, a time of rejoicing, especially considering that the Jews are not that far away from the time that they erred so terribly with the golden calf. And this was the greatest sign that Hashem accepted their tshuva and is choosing to once again be with them, be part of them, in a very visible and, like I said, tangible manner. That joy, unfortunately, was very, very rudely interrupted. And very abruptly. What happened? It says, chapter 9, verse 24, in the book of Leviticus. A fire came out from before Hashem and consumed the offerings and all the fats that was on the altar. The entire people saw the glory of Hashem, and all the people just sang out in praise. Suddenly, the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, they grabbed their pans full of incense and ran into the Holy of Holies. They had a spiritual moment. They went beyond any restrictions, beyond any physical limitations. And they just ran in there. And they had such a special, such an immense, such an intense spiritual experience that it says they were consumed by fire that came out from before Hashem. They died. Tragedy. On this very happy day, on this day of such great spiritual excitement, boom, that beautiful bubble just snapped. What happened? It says the fire consumed them. In fact, we know several verses later, Moshe says to his nephews, to their cousins, the cousins of the deceased that is, I want you to take the two in their garments, in their priestly garments, and bury them. That tells us that they weren't charred by fire. Rather, the sages tell us that this teaches us that the way they died is that a very, almost like a wire-thin line of fire went into their nostrils and just swept out their souls. Just sucked their souls out of their body. Chassidut teaches us that what happened here was something that really, on the one hand, every individual needs to aspire to. In plain, simple English, that desire to get really close and together with Hashem, with God. The love that burns in one's heart should consume the person to the extent that the person has this burning desire that thrusts them forward to get closer and closer with Hashem. At the same time, however, the way they did it, the way they went about it, is wrong. That's not what Hashem wants. And in plain simple English, because it's unsustainable. You get too close, you get too hot with this fire, and body and soul can no longer stay together. And if that happens, then as great as the experience was for the moment, and as tremendous as the spiritual moment was, it's not what Hashem wants. Since it's not sustainable, since that soul can no longer stay in the body, in their case, they become so consumed by the spirituality that their soul experienced that the body was no vessel to contain it. It's almost like pouring boiling hot water into a thin glass cup. Just shatters. It cannot tolerate it. It cannot contain it. And thus what happens? If that should happen to any of us, we can no longer perform the most simple of mitzvot, which requires that connection of body and soul. In fact, the mitzvah is done with the body. And that's why Hashem, immediately following this tragic event, instructs Moshe and Aaron and all future priests, and for that matter, all future Jews, all generations of Jews, don't come too close. Don't become intoxicated with this spirituality to such a level, to such a degree, that it's unsustainable. To use an example, an everyday example, I want you to think about it. We drive cars. In order for that car to drive, well, things might be changing now, but the typical combustible engine is what? The engine gets hot. It has to get very hot. There's fire in there. And that's in order for the car to drive. You need that energy, you need that power. The thing is, if it goes hot and more hot, unchecked, the engine cracks. Thus, you have a radiator that cools it down. It makes it balanced, sustainable. Thus, you can have a healthy measure of heat, not too much, not too little. When it's too cold out there and you can't get that engine hot, you ain't going nowhere. But hot enough that you can drive. Hot enough that you can get to your destination and have that performance you need in that vehicle. And that's the message over here. I want you to think of it in practical terms. You say, but what's wrong? I love Hashem so much. They loved Hashem so much. They want to get so close. Sadly, they forgot somewhat about Hashem, and it was more about them and their spiritual experience, their, so to speak, spiritual pleasure. Think of it in terms of someone you love. That person's sleeping. And you look at that person and you say, wow, I want to express my love to that person right here, right now. I want to give that person a big hug. I want to give my child a big kiss on the forehead. Guess what's going to happen when you do that while the person's fast asleep? You're going to rudely awaken them from their sleep. Now, is that love? Or what kind of love is that? It's love that makes you feel better. You are excited about it. You are expressing your feelings. But for the recipient, and in this case for the end result, it's a detriment. It's not a positive. It's not really love. It can actually be translated into the family of hate. And that's the message for us. Do everything. Do that love. Come close to Hashem, but never come too close. Not because Hashem doesn't want us close to Him, but because He has a more important mission for us. Shalom.